Welcome to the presentation on AB1705. What I want to explore is what would happen if we implemented AB1705. I think this is an important lesson that I want to show everyone here. Let this be something that we use as a learning exercise, and this is what I teach in my classrooms. So take a look at the Titanic mortality table here. Okay, when we think of the Titanic, very often we think that everybody actually died on the Titanic, and that's not actually the case. We did have survivors on the Titanic. And in fact, what this table shows here, really, if you follow that first column here, there are 706 survivors, and there were 1,517 people who did not survive. That's also known as dying. Now I summarize that information down here, that there's 706 survivors to 1,517 people who did not survive. Now I'm going to express where I get this number, the unit ratio, and why that number is so important. Okay, so I'm going to express where that comes from. And let me highlight this here. It might be difficult to see, so I guess I'll highlight it maybe blue. Lighter number. Okay. So let's take a look here. First of all, this is a ratio. 706 people survived the Titanic to 1,517 people who did not survive. Now, when you look at this, we want to unitize it. It's easier to relate the ratios if we unitize, right? So this is our definition of a ratio. Now, unitizing means we can actually divide either quantity by itself, and that will give the number 1 meaning unit. So what I'm going to do now here is this. I'm going to divide both quantities by this first number A, so I can get that number 1. That's what we mean by the unit ratio. This is a unit ratio now, as long as I do it to both quantities. So I'm going to divide now, if I move things around, both numbers here by 706. Now, what does that do? 706 over 706 gives you the number 1. There's where the word unit comes from. And then I have to find out what this ratio here of 1,517 divided by 706 is. So I'm going to go to my calculator. 1,517 divided by 706. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I get the number 2.148 to the nearest thousands, actually 9 to the nearest thousands. Okay? So what this actually means now is simply there is 1 survivor to 2.149 non-survivors. Now, if you want to go and approximate to the nearest tenths to get an idea, 2.1, you're welcome to do so, or you can use 2.149. But what this does is it gives you an idea that for every 1 survivor on the Titanic, 2.1 people did not survive, and that's an important thing to know. Okay, for every 1 survivor, there was 2.1 non-survivors. Those are people that perished. That's an important detail. This is called a unit ratio, ladies and gentlemen. And they are very fundamental, very important unit ratios. A lot of us work with this, and this is what we learn in statistics. So, okay, we got a unit ratio here now. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to the AB705 information. And to do that, I got to go over to Microsoft Excel. So here we go. right? There is our unit ratio of 2.149 that I shared with you earlier. But I'm going to go over some assumptions here. See, if you go to the State Chancellor's website, go to the dashboard. I have a link up here for you. In my browser, if you click this link in my browser, this is where it takes you. And I gathered this data from the State Chancellor's website. This is their data. Now, if the data is invalid or problematic, that's not anything that has to do with me. Okay, I'm using their data that they use to advertise success, failure, or whatever regarding our colleges in the state. And that's where this data came from. So I want to remark, first off, what I did was I took students that take the course, a transfer level course in English and math in that first year, because that's what AB1705 is saying. We're going to eliminate all pre-transfer. So what that means is everybody goes to transfer. So this data is about everybody who went straight to transfer. Okay, it's on the State Chancellor's website, so I want to make that clear. That's the first assumption. And here's something you also want to know, which is interesting, that those people who went straight to transfer, if you understand AB705, and very few people really do, that group of people were people who completed math and English courses in high school at a higher level. So that was part of the multiple measures, to include what you did in high school and to include the GPA. That's the multiple part for multiple measures. So this group is people who had the highest GPA and completed the most English and math courses. That's an important detail. The second detail is that this data does not include students who dropped before census. Yeah, they didn't include people who maybe said, I walked in, looked at the syllabus, started the course. This is beyond my abilities possibly, and simply, drop before census, they're out. Okay? I think they should have included those people if they wanted a clearer picture. Now, that means your data is somewhat skewed and self-selective, right? These are people who felt that they can succeed in the course because we want to include that data, but they didn't. And also to remind you that the State Chancellor was supposed to update, was supposed to update the dashboard to include 2020 to 2021. They were supposed to do that last spring, 2021, so they're really behind schedule. So ladies and gentlemen, I just want to kind of let that be known to you just from the start that yes, this is a picture of people who just enter into transfer. And we're going to see how well they did. And remember, these were the best students, the most prepared in theory students who entered into transfer, which is what AB 1705 is trying to do. So if I look at Mission College, for example, I'm going to do the analysis that I've done. I'm going to walk through this for you guys. Okay? In fall 2018, right up in here, everything here in green, this is people who are under pre-AB 705 placement for fall 2018. In yellow, these are people who are the first year of AB 705. Okay, and there's also a little bit of issues here I may mention. But we're comparing pre-AB 705 and then AB 705 on that first year. We're going to compare this data. So notice this. LA Mission had a cohort size of 442 students pre-AB 705, okay, right in that first column C. And then once you implemented AB 705, which opened the floodgates, so to speak, it gave students access, right? And so you say, what do we mean by this access? They're able to take the course. So at LA Mission, for example, once AB 705 went into effect, we had an additional 196 students. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a good thing. We like that because we gave access. Now, let's see what happened with that access going from pre-AB 705 to AB 705 that first year. What happened was this. pre-AB705, 216 students got through. They passed the transfer level math course, those that entered into transfer level. And then once AB705 took effect, take a look. 221 students passed the transfer level math course. Now, if you take the difference, ladies and gentlemen, that difference right here is 5. So you guys can see that here. Apologize. That difference is here. It is 5. What that means is this is called throughput. This is what the proponents of AB705 and AB1705 are saying, that this is completely what the situation is all about. This is what they want you to know. We got 5 students through. Look at us. Look how wonderful this idea is. Hey, that's 5 more people that got through that wouldn't have, so therefore we're successful. That is only part of the picture, ladies and gentlemen. That's only part of the story right in here. The other part I want you to understand and know about is this column here. It's called the complement of throughput. This is the number of people who did not get through. Okay, who didn't get through. Remember, we opened the floodgates. We got 5 people through. That's fantastic. How many did not get through? 191 students did not get through. So you said, 5 to what? 191. They did not get through. So I'm going to go to the iPad now. Remember, this is 5 to 191. This is that throughput. This is the successes. This is the additional students that got through. Okay? I'm going to unitize this. Divide by 5. Divide by 5, and you get that unit ratio of 1 additional success. Throughput. This is what they celebrate. They're going, yay, we got an additional student through. We're a success. But they're ignoring this part over here. What are they ignoring? 191 to 5. Let's see what that is. So in the TI, we're going to now say, okay, 191 divided by 5. This is the additional students that did not get through. And as you guys see, you get 38.2. Okay? 38.2. Let me go to the iPad. This is what I want you to pay attention to as a number. This is the complement of throughput. This did not get through. Okay, and this is the additional students. This is not even including, everyone else. This is the addition, right? So we're saying, oh, good, you got 5 students through, but you lost 191? What does that mean? For every additional student that got through, 38.2 did not get through. This is the essence of the argument. This is what they do not want you to know. This is what they do not want you to see. But it's an important number. It's probably more important than the number that got through, because you want to consider who's not getting through. Well, let's take a look. If we go back to the spreadsheet here now, remember the lesson I gave. I'm going to go to Hispanics first for a good reason on this worksheet. And on the right side here, this is the unitizing ratios I just did here, so you guys can see that. I want you guys to summarize it all and look there, because I did the math for you already. You see, when it came to Hispanic students in fall 2018, pre-AB705, 355 students walked through that transfer level math course, in the first year. And the following year, under AB705, 531 students walked in. That's called access. You got 176 students that actually were now able to take a transfer level math course. That's great. That's access. Okay, what happened? Of the additional 176 Hispanic students, You know what? 11 got through. Great. That's throughput right in here. This is the throughput. And you go, wonderful. We got 11 students through. That's a wonderful thing. But how many did not get through? How many additional Hispanic students, did not get through? And that's 165. Okay, so that ratio is 11 to 165. So if I now say, 11 to 165, this is my nice throughput number. This is what they're saying. Hey, we have given Hispanic students access. Aren't you so happy about that? Hey, this is about equity. Well, let's take a look. Unitize it. 1, 2, let's see. 165 divided by 11. So I'm going to go through the TI now. 165 divided by 11. And now, ladies and gentlemen, you get 15. 15 students, not 15 students, 15 additional Hispanic students that did not get through, ladies and gentlemen. So, okay, again, one additional Hispanic student got through. Hey, this is about equity, right? We'll take a look. 15 additional Hispanic students did not get through. Okay? This is the throughput. Oh, you had some success. This is the non-success. And this is the additional students. So again, there's more to the story. This is a unit ratio. For every additional Hispanic student that got through, 15 additional Hispanic students did not get through. But what do the proponents of AB705 say? It's about equity. Personally, ladies and gentlemen, I do not think so. If you want to overlook these metrics, if you want to not acknowledge this, you cannot claim this is about equity. One additional student got through. There's your magic throughput number. This is what you're advertising, but you're not advertising the additional 15 Hispanic students that did not get through. Now, it gets worse than that. And here's what I mean. Let me go to Microsoft again, the Excel spreadsheet. You see, for African American students, right? Now, that's a small sample size. So when small sample sizes exist, some weird things do happen. But let's use their logic. Let's use their data and their logic. Okay, African American students, pre-AB705, 10 entered into the transfer level math course in the first year. Again, that's what happened. AB705 comes along and gives people access. Remember, this is 16 students. This is the best 16 students. The best 16 African American students. Remember the assumptions? Right? Because they met a higher GPA standard in the multiple measure. They met a higher course completion in high school under the multiple measure standard. The same thing happened for Hispanics. All right? So what's the access number? They gave 6 additional African American students access. 6 additional. What was the result? Take a look at this number. That's a -5, ladies and gentlemen. What that means is pre-AB705 had 7 students get through who were African American. And then once AB705 kicked in, 2 students got through. That's a negative number. That's -5. And if you look at the complement of the throughput, you went from 3 students who did not get through pre-AB705 to 14 who did not get through. That's 11 students who did not get through. So even if I were to assume and fudge the data, because that's a negative number, even if I said, no, change it to 1, right? What does that mean? Because I don't even know how to deal with the negative ratio, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I put for the unit ratios over here. I put not applicable because that's a negative number. But let's assume, okay, that it was just 1 student. Let's assume that they got 1 additional African American student through. If we do that, the ratio becomes 1 to 11, right? Just assuming 1 additional success. That's throughput. This is what these guys are saying you should celebrate. You got one additional student. Well, not really. You lost 5. But take a look. The complement. This is the complement. This is that did not get through. Okay? And this is for, again, African Americans. And that's at one college. That's the number you should be concerned with, because what happens to those students? Is this really about equity? I don't think so. If you're going to lose 15 additional Hispanic students, 11 additional African American students, I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is discouraging. And if you're not discouraged by that, I have to question why. Because this is not about equity. This is about the numbers. I'm not using percents. I'm keeping it simple. This is a snapshot of what you can expect if you eliminate pre-transfer English and math. You're going to see these kinds of situations. In fact, it's going to be worse, because what does this assume? This assumes the highest, the best prepared. These are the best prepared students in the highest GPA, okay, who completed high school math and English courses that may allow them to be successful. But take a look. When you have 1 to 15, 1 to 11, 1 to 38.2, ladies and gentlemen, there is something wrong with this picture. Now go back here. Go back to the spreadsheet. This is what I want you guys to see here too. Okay. Take a look at these lines. Now, I don't have a way. If you can see 2018, 2019, this is the equity gaps. And this is where different ethnic groups were in terms of the percent who have completed. Now, look at the last at the end to the right there. I'm looking to the right side. Look at what happened. Every group here, every group, I got to be careful. Okay. Every group, ladies and gentlemen, had declining success rates. And those gaps did not get closed. You guys with me? There's gaps between those places on the right side there. Okay? There's gaps. What does that mean? That means AB1705 in that first year, for students, the best students, they started at transfer level English and math. This is the math picture. The best students, ladies and gentlemen, had declining success rates, and the gaps even widened in some degree. That's all the way on the right side. I wish I can get in there and touch it. I don't know. I can't, but I'll try to see if I can edit the video. But this is explaining to you this worksheet that I want you to look over. Okay? Because if we just switch colleges, let's now go to City College. Okay? Let's see what we see in City for math. Yes, you do see what again? If you guys take a look at this, you do see the declining success rates all the way to the right side, the two nodes. Declining success rates, okay, for all groups, African American, Asian, Hispanic, and white. They were all declining. And take a look. Did we close equity gaps? Well, if you look at the red and the black, which is Hispanic and African American, what that did was it actually made what? You close gaps there, but you close them lower. And you close gaps between the blue and green, and that's Asian and white students. So now they're closer together. However, the others are further apart. So you did not close equity gaps. And you decreased success for the most prepared students of each group. What would happen with AB 1705 when you include everybody? The data is going to be worse. Now let's look at the unit ratios. This particular college here, this is LA City. I want you to focus on the unit ratios on this side here. For every one student, additional student in LA City College, 3.2 students did not get through. If you look at African American students right in here, for every one African American student, 31 additional. Remember throughput? They got access of 32. 32 African American students were now able to take transfer level English and math in the first in that first term. We got one additional student through. That's the throughput. This is what the proponents of AB1705 are saying is what this is about. We want equity. We got one African American student through, but they're not talking about the 31 who did not get through. 31 African American students did not get through. What's the unit ratio? It's already here, 1 to 31. Focus on that number, 31. 31 additional African Americans did not get through. Is that about equity? I love the word equity. I love how people can pick and choose when they can apply it. Look at Hispanic Americans. Now that's a large sample size. Remember I said small sample sizes, funny things happen? Yeah, they do. But look at the larger sample size. At City College here, LA City, an additional 555 students got through. We gave them access for Hispanic students. That's a great, wonderful thing. And you know what? 105 got through. That's the throughput. Now the proponents are going to say, yeah, look at that. I told you this was about equity. We got an additional 105 Hispanic students through. But what aren't they telling you? 450 did not get through. What's the unit ratio? One success, one additional success to every 4.286, about 4.3 non-successes. Now, these are numbers, ladies and gentlemen. For every one success, 4.286 non-successes. The reason I go through the analysis this way, and you can actually look at what happened at, well, we already talked about the declining success rates, right? And the lack of closing equity gaps. What about over here now, right? Let's look at trade. LA trade. What is this here? Let me find it if you want to look at LA trade here. Look at LA trade. Look at the unit ratios. For LA trade, okay, right here, that first column, they have 64 students who got access. These are the best students again. Highest GPA, completed math English courses, blah, 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 right? They gave access to an additional 64 students, and that's a wonderful thing. And you know what? Of the 64, the additional 64, they got throughput of 11. An additional 11 students got through. What aren't they telling you? 53 did not get through. What's the unit ratio? 1 to 4.818. Now, this is for students in general. I looked at, ladies and gentlemen, the data for African American and Hispanic students. Look at the unit ratios. If you're African American, for every additional African American who got through, 14 did not get through. Hispanic students, for every additional Hispanic student that got through, 1.938 did not get through. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a problem, okay? Because these are people. They're people. Now, if I go to West LA, let's look at West LA. Okay, I'm gonna let this be the last one for West LA because you guys get the picture. You can look over this file. I'm gonna give you the file as well. 231 students got access. For every student, and this is additional students, for every additional student that got through, 2.983 did not get through. That's almost 3. African Americans, let's look at them. For 60 had access, additional 60 students that first year. These are the best students, highest GPA, blah, blah, blah. For every one additional student that got through, 3.286 did not get through. African Americans, we got an additional, Hispanics, we got an additional 138 got access. That's a great thing. Of the 138 additional, we had an additional 31 get through, but we also had an additional 107 did not get through. Unit ratio, 3.452. So for every additional Hispanic who got through, we lost 3.452 Hispanics. This is what I say to people. AB705, and now what's worse is AB1705, is going to ignore the fact that these were all the best students in the highest GPA band, completing math and English in high school type of thing, right? These were the best students there. And what just happened? For every additional success, we see a lot of non-successes. Let's compare this to the Titanic, right? Now you guys understand what I mean. For every one person who survived the Titanic, we lost 2.149 people. So we don't consider the Titanic a successful cruise. Why would we consider AB1705 a successful initiative when we see what we see in terms of the data and in terms of the lack of success rates and in terms of the unit ratios? This is not, ladies and gentlemen, a great idea, because the question now becomes, what happens to all these students? Where do they go? We could look at Harvard. Where do they go? Look at the information for Harvard College. Harvard College right here. This is a picture tells 1,000 words here. Declining success rates, not closing equity gaps, a loss of students. Now, when you lose students, they get discouraged. It's not so easy to say, hey, guess what? Try again. Get some more tutoring. Well, what happens if you have to take care of your mother or your children, or you got to go to work? Can you put in an additional 3 to 4 hours a day? Now, I know the answer because I've been in the classroom for over 26 years and I talk to my students. So I know those answers. AB 1705 is not a one-size-fits-all because people are different. And AB 1705, like AB 705, did not close any equity gaps. In fact, they're not going to talk about the people that did not get through. Now, there's great concerns for those who did not get through. We lose them, they become disenfranchised, and who knows where they end up, if you guys know what I mean. I suspect that this is all about something else. This is not about equity. This is not about closing equity gaps. This is about using particular groups for their benefit. And that benefit is not for the groups they claim they represent, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to leave the document. You could look over LA Pierce College. Again, this is their 1 to, for African Americans, 1 to 3. For Hispanics, 1 to 2.32. Again, you're more likely to survive the Titanic than you are as the best students in the highest GPA completing math and English courses already in high school of getting through a transfer level English and math course. I think we can do better, ladies and gentlemen. So there you go. Have a great day. Take care. Stay safe. Look over this data and think, ladies and gentlemen. Think for yourself, because what I started to say, what AB 705 does, and by extension AB 1705, they're willing to pay the price, but they're not counting the cost. I'll say that again. They're willing to pay the price, but they do not count the cost. And who is this really costing? It's costing students of color. And one day, people are going to have to answer for that. Politicians throughout the state, politicians on local school boards, people are going to have to answer, because this is going to be out there forever. Thank you for your time.